Some folks say the desert washes you clean, that the sun and the dust can bake the sin right out of your bones. They're wrong. Out here, the sins don't wash away. They stick. They fester. They turn a man into something hollow, a ghost walking through a sun-bleached graveyard he calls his life. I should know. My name is Samuel Hayes, and I was already dead long before death came knocking on my door. It didn't come with a bang. It didn't come with a scream. It came on the back of a half-starved mule, quiet as a rattler in the shade. The animal just stood there at my fence line, dumb and patient, like it had carried the sorrows of the world and was ready to be done with it. It had a small, busted wagon hitched to its back, and on that wagon was a shape wrapped in filthy canvas and tied with rope. Just another piece of garbage dumped in the Badlands. I stepped off my porch. The wood groaned under my boots. The coffee in my tin cup was stone cold, but I didn't put it down. Holding it felt normal, and normal was a currency I hadn't traded in for a long, long time. 3 months of drought had turned my land to a cracked gray plate. The air was thick with heat and silence, a silence that felt wrong. The wagon was a wreck. The canvas was ripped, showing a sliver of what was inside. Tucked into the rope knot was a piece of paper, folded neat and clean. I pulled it free. The handwriting was sharp, precise. 4 words. Your turn has come. Not paid in full. Not property delivered. Just, your turn has come. The words didn't sit right. They coiled in my gut like a cold snake. I'd been cavalry. I'd been a lot of things since. I'd seen men do unspeakable things to other men. But this felt different. This felt like a message written just for me, in an ink I knew all too well. The ink of a past I'd buried 1,000 miles and 100 lifetimes away. I reached for the canvas. My hand hesitated. Whatever was under there, it was the period at the end of a sentence I didn't want to read. But the desert doesn't give you a choice. It just gives you the heat, the dust, and the truth. I pulled back the canvas, and my world tilted on its axis. It was a girl. Couldn't have been more than 20, maybe 22. But her eyes, when they flickered open, they were ancient. They were the eyes of someone who had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had stared right back, and then it had climbed inside and made itself at home. Her dark hair was matted with dried blood. Her skin was a roadmap of cruelty, painted in the sick purples and yellows of old bruises. Her dress was torn to shreds, but it was her back that made the air freeze in my lungs. Letters, carved deep into her skin, healed over, rough and angry. A brand. But it wasn't a ranch brand. It was letters. WHORE branded. Like cattle. Her eyes found mine. They were green as bottle glass and just as empty. No fear, no hope, nothing. Just a void. She looked at me, at the man standing over her broken body, and a whisper escaped her cracked lips. A voice like sandpaper on dry leather. You the one who bought me? I couldn't speak. The coffee cup slipped from my numb fingers. It hit the dirt and shattered, the black liquid spreading like a stain on the thirsty ground. I had killed men. I had seen war. I had looked evil in the eye more times than I could count. But this was something else. This was a different kind of damnation. The girl's empty green eyes never left my face. Then finish it, she rasped. And right now, if you're settling in for this ride, you might want to hit that subscribe button. Because what I did next, it wasn't about saving her. It was about finding out if there was anything left of me to save. Out here, in the land of no second chances, what do you do when a ghost from your past delivers hell right to your doorstep? I didn't answer her. What could I say? How do you respond to a soul that's already decided it's gone? I scooped her up. She weighed nothing. A bundle of sticks and shattered pride. I carried her inside, careful as if she were made of spun glass. She didn't fight. She didn't even flinch. It was like her body was just a thing she was trapped in, and it didn't matter what anyone did to it anymore. I laid her on the spare bed, the one that had stayed empty since before. The moment her head hit the pillow, her eyes closed, and she was gone. Not asleep. Gone. It was a sleep so deep it looked like death was just practicing. For 3 days, she didn't move. I sat there in the quiet of my house and I cleaned her wounds. Wounds made by a man who wasn't just cruel, but was an artist of pain. The brand on her back, it was a story I didn't want to read, but the letters were burned into my mind. Someone had taken their time. Someone had wanted her to carry that message forever. On the fourth morning, I was sitting by the bed, nursing a cup of coffee, when she sat bolt upright. No warning, no sound, just there, staring at the far wall like she could see clean through it, to a world beyond my dusty cabin. "Why didn't you?" she asked. Her voice was stronger now, but just as flat. I looked up. "Didn't what?" "Finish it," she said, her eyes still locked on the wall. "Use me, kill me. I'm already broken. It would have been a kindness." I put my cup down. The early light coming through the window carved her face out of the shadows. Even with the bruises and the cuts, you could see she'd been beautiful once, before someone decided to tear that beauty apart and rearrange it into a monument of their own hate. "Because I'm not him," I said, my voice rough. She turned her head then, and for the first time she really looked at me, and she laughed. It was the most terrible sound I'd ever heard. It wasn't a laugh of joy or humor. It was the sound of a soul breaking. The sound something makes when it's been pushed so far past pain that the only thing left is a joke the devil himself would find cruel. "Oh," she said, the laugh dying in her throat. "Every man is him. Just needs the right reason, the right price, the right opportunity." Maybe. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was just starting to spill over the Badlands, painting the whole world the color of a fresh wound. But these ain't those circumstances. And I ain't him. She watched me, her head tilted. This stranger who had carried her in from the sun instead of leaving her for the buzzards. She saw the gray in my hair, the scars on my hands. Old scars, clean scars. The kind a man earns, not the kind he gives. "What's your name?" she asked. "Samuel Hayes." "Margaret," she said. "Maggie." Before. She gestured to herself, to the ruin she'd become. "I was property of Sheriff Crawford." Crawford. The name hit me like a physical blow. I knew the name. Everyone in this territory did. Will Crawford was the law in 3 counties. A man who wore his badge like a shield to hide the rot underneath. A man whose reputation was built on whispers and disappearances. "Not anymore," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "You're on my land now. Crawford's law stops at my fence line." Maggie studied my silhouette against the rising sun. She saw the tension in my shoulders, the way I stood like I was always ready for a fight. "You have no idea what you've just done," she whispered. "Crawford doesn't let go. Ever. I was his favorite." The word was poison on her tongue. "And I know things. Things that could get a man like him hanged. That's why he did this to me. To break me. To make sure no one would ever believe a word I said." I turned from the window. Our eyes met. And in that moment something passed between us. It was a flicker of recognition. The kind that only 2 people who've walked through the same kind of hell can share. We were strangers, but we knew each other's ghosts. "Then we'll just have to make sure you live long enough to say it," I said. But as the words left my mouth, I saw something shift in her eyes. It wasn't relief. It was fear. A deeper fear than before. "You don't understand," she said, her voice dropping so low I could barely hear it. "The brand. The letters on my back. It's not what you think." "I saw what I saw," I told her. "No," she insisted, shaking her head, her dark hair falling across her bruised face. "You saw what he wanted you to see. But you didn't look close enough. He was interrupted. He wasn't finished." A cold dread trickled down my spine. "What are you talking about, Maggie?" She looked me dead in the eye, and the emptiness was gone, replaced by a burning, terrifying fire. "It wasn't supposed to say whore," she said, her voice shaking with a rage that seemed to come from the center of the earth. "Those were just the first letters. He was branding me with the initials of the girls, the ones he killed, the ones he made me watch. WHORE. It was a list, and I was meant to be the next name." The room spun. A list. A list of the dead, carved into the flesh of his last victim. This wasn't just cruelty. This was a level of evil that had no name. It was a monster wearing a sheriff's badge. And by taking her in, I had just invited that monster to my door. I looked at this broken girl, this living testament to a madman's depravity, and I knew one thing for certain. My quiet, hollow life was over. The war I'd been running from had finally found me. I thought I was saving a victim, a poor, broken girl caught in the claws of a monster. But the truth, like everything else in the desert, was a mirage. The story she told me wasn't the whole story, not even close. "He made you watch?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The idea was unthinkable. Maggie's eyes hardened. The fear was still there, but it was buried under layers of something else, something cold and sharp. "Watch?" Mr. Hayes, watching was the easy part. She took a shuddering breath, and the next words out of her mouth shattered the simple picture I'd painted in my head. "He made me help. He made me dig the graves. He made me clean the blood. He said it was the only way to make sure I'd keep my mouth shut, that if he went down, I'd go down with him." The air left my lungs. She wasn't just a witness. She was an accomplice. Forced, yes. Terrified, without a doubt. But her hands were just as dirty as his. My first instinct was revulsion, to back away, to tell her to get out. My home was a sanctuary from the world's filth, not a part of it. I had enough blood on my own hands. I didn't need to take on hers. I saw the shift in my face, the judgment in my eyes. I saw her see it, and her whole body crumpled. The fire went out, leaving behind nothing but ashes. "I know what you're thinking," she whispered, pulling the thin blanket around her shoulders like a shield. "That I'm a monster too. Maybe I am. After a while, you just go numb. You do what they tell you, because the alternative is being the one in the grave. Please, just give me some water and point me toward the mountains. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again." She was ready to run, ready to be a ghost again. And in that moment I saw it. The choice. I could let her go. Let the desert swallow her up. Let Crawford think his problem had taken care of itself. I could go back to my quiet, empty life, my hollow days. Or I could face the truth. The ugly, complicated, blood-soaked truth. I looked at her, at this girl who had been forged into a weapon against her will, who had been made a partner in her own damnation. And I saw a reflection, a distorted, broken reflection of myself, a man who had followed orders, a man who had done things in the name of a flag that still kept him awake at night. "No," I said, the word like a stone in my throat. I walked to the stove, poured her a cup of water, and brought it to her. My hand was steady. My mind was made up. "You're not running anywhere. You said you were his bookkeeper of sins. Well, it's time for an audit." A strange routine settled over the next few days. I'd leave food for her, fresh clothes. I gave her space, but I watched her. I watched as the numbness slowly receded, replaced by a quiet, simmering anger. She started to help around the ranch, mending a fence here, brushing down my old mare there. Her hands, which had done such terrible things, remembered how to do simple, good things. And she started to talk. Little pieces at first, a name whispered in a nightmare, a location of a shallow grave mentioned over a plate of beans. She was unburdening herself, laying the pieces of Crawford's entire rotten empire at my feet. It was bigger than I could have imagined. Not just a few girls, dozens. A network that stretched across the territory, built on fear and bribes and the kind of evil that flourishes in dark, lonely places. One evening, I found her by the corral, her face turned toward the setting sun. "He'll send someone soon," she said, not looking at me. "He can't risk me being out here. He'll send his deputy, Marcus Webb." "I can handle a deputy," I said. She finally turned to look at me, and there was a strange, desperate light in her eyes. "You don't understand. Webb, he's not like the others. He's different." "Different how?" "He's my brother." The confession hung in the air between us, heavy and unbelievable. Her brother was Crawford's right-hand man? It didn't make any sense. Crawford took me when I was 16, she explained, her voice trembling. Marcus was just a boy. Crawford threatened to kill him if I ever stepped out of line. He forced Marcus to join the force, to work for him, to keep him close, to keep him as leverage against me. Every cruel thing Marcus does, he does because Crawford is holding a gun to my head, or his. This changed the board entirely. We didn't just have an enemy. We had a potential ally, trapped on the wrong side of the war. But was he a broken man, or a coiled snake waiting to strike? When he comes, Maggie said, her gaze intense, he will threaten you. He will say terrible things. He will play the part of Crawford's loyal dog. But watch his hands. He has a tell. When he's lying for Crawford, he taps his thumb against the grip of his pistol. 1, 2, 3 times. It was a signal we had as kids. A secret language. A hidden rebellion. This was a deeper game than I ever imagined. The pieces were moving, and I was standing right in the middle of the board. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that the next rider to appear on the horizon wouldn't just be a threat, he would be a test, and maybe, just maybe, a key. 3 days later he came, a lone rider silhouetted against the dying sun, moving with an easy confidence that screamed, "Lawman!" I was on the porch cleaning my Colt, a ritual that felt more necessary than ever. "Company," I said, my voice low. Inside, I heard a pan clatter to the floor. He rode up to the fence, dismounting with a grace that was almost arrogant. He had the expensive hat, the silver-trimmed saddle, and the deputy's badge that caught the last rays of sunlight like a shard of broken glass. "Evening," he called out, his voice smooth as whiskey. "Name's Deputy Marcus Webb, looking for some misplaced property." I didn't get up. I just kept wiping down the barrel of my pistol. "Don't recall ordering anything." Webb's smile was all teeth. "Funny thing is, someone did. Sheriff Crawford. He's missing a girl. Dark hair, green eyes. Heard she might have wandered onto your land." His eyes flickered toward the house, a predator scenting his prey. "A lot of things wander through here," I said, my voice flat. "Desert's got a way of swallowing them up." "Indeed it does." He took a step closer, his hand resting casually on the butt of his gun. I watched his thumb. It was perfectly still. "See, this girl, she's a ward of the county, a danger to herself and others. The sheriff is just concerned for her welfare." "He has a funny way of showing it," I said. Webb's smile tightened. "Now I could come back with a warrant, with a dozen men, make this all official and messy." The threat was clear. "Or," he continued, taking another step, "we could handle this quiet-like. You return what ain't yours, and the sheriff is prepared to be very generous. He values his privacy." His thumb, it tapped. Once, twice, 3 times, against the worn leather of his gun belt. It was real. Maggie's story was real. This wasn't just a threat. It was a performance. And it was a warning. The dozen men were real. The mess was real. He was telling me to play along, but he was also telling me what was coming. From the window, I saw a flicker of movement. Maggie, her face pale, was watching. Her eyes met mine, and I gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. She understood. I stood up slowly, letting my own hand drift down to rest near my Colt. "Tell Sheriff Crawford," I said, my voice carrying across the dusty yard, "that there's nothing here that belongs to him." Webb's friendly mask dropped. The predator was out. "That's the wrong answer, Hayes. In this county, everything belongs to the sheriff, including you." His hand dropped. It was fast, but it wasn't a real draw. It was a feint, designed to look convincing, but just slow enough for me to react. My own Colt cleared the holster in a single, fluid motion, the barrel coming up to point directly at the center of his chest. "I wouldn't," I said, my voice as cold as a grave. For a long second, we were frozen, a tableau of death waiting to happen. Then slowly, Webb raised his hands, that fake smile returning to his face. "My mistake," he said. "Misjudged the situation." As he turned to go, his back to me, he stumbled, catching himself on the fence post. It looked like an accident, but I saw his hand slip something into a crack in the old wood. a small, folded piece of paper. "This ain't over, Hayes," he called out as he swung into his saddle. "The sheriff doesn't forget." He spurred his horse, vanishing into the twilight. The moment the sound of hoofbeats faded, Maggie was out the door. "What happened? What did he do?" I walked to the fence post, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached into the crack and pulled out the paper. I unfolded it. It wasn't a note, it was a map. A crudely drawn layout of a fortified ranch, Crawford's headquarters. There were guard positions marked, patrol routes, and on the back wall of the main house, a small X with a single word written beside it. Ledger. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about rescuing a girl anymore. It was about tearing down an empire. Webb wasn't just giving us a warning, he was giving us a weapon. He was asking us to do what he couldn't, to burn it all to the ground. Maggie looked at the map in my hand and then at me. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced with a terrible, blazing resolve. "He doesn't just keep the girls there," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He entertains his clients there. Powerful men, politicians, judges, and he keeps a record of every visit, every name, every transaction." She looked at me, her eyes boring into mine. "That ledger isn't just his downfall. It's the key to cleaning out this whole territory." We were standing on a precipice. Behind us was a quiet death. Ahead of us was a war we had almost no chance of winning, but for the first time in years I felt something other than the hollow ache of my past. I felt a purpose. I looked from the map to Maggie's determined face to the darkening horizon where a storm was gathering, a storm of our own making. "Then we better get started," I said. The map was our Bible and our death warrant. We spent the next 2 days hunched over it by lamplight, Maggie's memory filling in the details Webb's hasty drawing left out. She knew the compound like the back of her hand, the blind spots in the patrol routes, the time of the guard changes, the squeaky floorboard outside Crawford's office. She had been a prisoner, but she had also been observant. She had been collecting intelligence, waiting for a weapon, and I, it seemed, was the weapon she'd been waiting for. "The ledger isn't just a book," she explained, tracing a line on the map with her finger. "It's a series of books, hidden in a false bottom of a chest in his study. I was the only one he trusted to handle them. He used to brag that my memory was better than any safe." "Why you?" I asked. "Because I was the most broken," she said simply. "He thought he had hollowed me out completely. He thought I was just a shell, an obedient machine. He never imagined that while I was writing down the sins of powerful men, I was also memorizing them. Every name, every date, it's all up here." She tapped her temple. "Even if we get the books, he might think he can destroy them, but he can't destroy my memory." The sheer audacity of it left me speechless. This woman hadn't just endured. She had been plotting. She had been turning her prison into an arsenal. Our plan was desperate, bordering on suicidal. We couldn't take the compound by force. It was a fortress. But Maggie knew something else. Once a month, Crawford hosted a special gathering, a private auction for his wealthiest, most depraved clients. Security would be focused on the guests, not on the inner workings of the house. The guards would be distracted, drunk, and arrogant. It was our only window, and it was tomorrow night. "There's no time to get help," I said, the reality of our situation sinking in. "It's just you and me." "No," she said, looking up at me. "It's you, me, and my brother. Marcus will be there. He'll be in charge of Crawford's personal security. He can create a diversion, get us a window." "Can you trust him?" I asked. "When the bullets start flying, where will his loyalty be?" "He's my brother," she said, her voice fierce. "He's been a prisoner as long as I have. He's just been wearing a different kind of chain. He'll be there." But how to contact him? How to let him know the plan? We were cut off. That's when I remembered the old telegraph line that ran through the ghost town of Redemption, 10 miles south. It was a long shot. The line was barely maintained, but if it worked, I could send a coded message to a man I knew in Fort Williams. A man who owed me his life, Colonel Marcus Reed. He was the only person in the territory with enough federal power to act on the information in that ledger and make it stick. It was a two-pronged attack. I would ride to Redemption at dawn to send the wire, a desperate plea for reinforcements we'd likely never get. Maggie would stay here preparing. Then I'd ride back, and under the cover of darkness, we would ride to Hell's Gate and kick it in. The ride to redemption was tense. Every shadow looked like one of Crawford's men. The sun beat down, turning the air into a shimmering haze. The town was just as I remembered it, a collection of sun-bleached skeletons of buildings, monuments to busted dreams. The telegraph office was at the far end of the street, its windows boarded up, but the line itself, humming faintly in the heat, looked intact. I pushed the door open. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of light slanting through a hole in the roof. The operator was an old, wizened man with a face like a dried apple. He looked up at me over his spectacles, his expression unreadable. "Line to Fort William still work?" I asked, tossing a silver dollar on the dusty counter. "Sometimes," he grunted. "Depends on the weather and the whiskey." He pocketed the coin. "What's the message?" I passed him the paper. "To Colonel Reed. The package we discussed years ago has arrived. The contents are spoiled. A full quarantine is required. The source is at Black Creek Ranch. Meet me there in 3 days. The wolf is in the hen house." It was old code from my Army days. It meant I'd found the source of a rot we'd been hunting, and that I was about to move on it, with or without his help. The old man squinted at the message. He didn't ask any questions. He just turned to his key and began to tap. Click, clack, click. The rhythm was steady, professional. My heart pounded with every letter. This was it, the signal flare, the cry for help into the void. He finished, then turned to me. "Message sent," he said. "No guarantee anyone's listening on the other end." "You just do your job, I'll do mine," I said, turning to leave. But as my hand touched the door, the old man spoke again, his voice casual. "You know, Sheriff Crawford was just through here yesterday, asking about you. Said you were a friend of his, a good man to have around." I froze. My blood turned to ice. I slowly turned back to face him. The old man wasn't looking at me. He was looking at a brand new Winchester rifle leaning against the wall behind him. A rifle I hadn't noticed when I came in. "That's so," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Yep," the old man said, picking up a rag and polishing his key. "He's a very generous man, the sheriff. Takes care of his friends." He hadn't sent the message. He was one of Crawford's. The whole thing was a trap. The old man's hand started to drift toward the new rifle. He was stalling, waiting for whoever he'd alerted to arrive. I didn't have time. I drew my Colt. The sound of the hammer cocking echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. "You sent a different message, didn't you?" I snarled. "You told him where I was." The old man swallowed hard. The friendly, wizened act was gone. Now he just looked like a scared, greedy old man who'd made a bad bet. "He pays me well, Hayes." "He's about to pay you in dirt," I said, and that's when I heard it. The sound of horses, not one, at least half a dozen, coming hard and fast down the main street of the ghost town. He hadn't just alerted them. He'd been waiting for me. I was caught, trapped between a traitor and a posse, with miles of open desert between me and Maggie. I had walked right into the devil's parlor, and the devil was coming to collect. The world narrowed to the dusty telegraph office. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder, a drum beat counting down the last seconds of my life. The old operator, seeing his salvation thundering down the street, made his move. He dove for the Winchester. He was fast, but I was faster. My Colt bucked in my hand, the explosion deafening in the small space. The old man jerked backward, a look of pure surprise on his face, before collapsing over his telegraph key, sending a final, nonsensical message into the ether. I didn't have time to think. I burst through the back door of the office just as Crawford's men swarmed the front. Splinters flew as bullets tore through the thin wood where I'd been standing a second before. I was in a narrow alleyway, a maze of collapsing adobe and rotten wood. I sprinted, my boots kicking up decades of dust, the shouts of the posse echoing behind me. This wasn't a fight I could win. This was a race. I burst out of the alley and saw my horse, tethered a street over. It was my only chance. I ran, zigzagging between the skeletal remains of buildings as bullets whizzed past my head, kicking up puffs of dirt at my feet. They were trying to take me alive, to bring me to Crawford for whatever sick tortures he had planned. That was the only reason I wasn't already dead. I reached my horse, untied the reins with fumbling fingers, and threw myself into the saddle. A bullet tore through the fleshy part of my arm. It burned like a hot poker, but I ignored it. I dug my heels in, and the horse surged forward. A living arrow shot into the heart of the endless desert. They gave chase, their bullets chasing me out of the ghost town. But my horse was bred for endurance, not for town patrols. I pushed it harder than I ever had before, and slowly, agonizingly, the sound of their pursuit faded behind me. I was free, but I was wounded, and worse, the element of surprise was gone. Crawford knew. He knew I had Maggie. He knew I was coming for him. The friendly auction would be canceled. The compound would be on high alert. Our desperate plan was in ashes. I rode back to my ranch with a cold knot of dread in my stomach. The sun was setting, bathing the Badlands in a bloody light. As I approached my property, I slowed, my senses on high alert. Something was wrong. The air was too still, too quiet. I dismounted a quarter-mile out and approached on foot, my rifle in my hands. The house looked untouched, but there was no smoke from the chimney, no light in the windows. My heart hammered against my ribs. Had they gotten here first? Had they taken her? I crept up to the porch, my every step silent. I pushed the door open. The house was empty. Maggie was gone. The bed she had slept in was neatly made. The table was clear. But on the center of the table was a single object, a rifle shell, standing on its end. It was a sign, another piece of their secret language. But what did it mean? I racked my brain, my panic rising. Was it a warning? A message? And then I saw it. Scratched into the dusty surface of the table, right next to the shell, was a single, shakily drawn symbol. A star. A five-pointed star, a sheriff's badge. The rifle shell wasn't from her. It was from him. From Crawford. It was a promise. And the star? That wasn't Maggie's drawing either. It was a taunt. He had her. He had taken her back to his fortress, the place with the star on the gate. He was daring me to come, daring me to walk into the lion's den. But then my eyes caught something else. Underneath the star, almost invisible in the fading light, were 5 tiny scratches. 5 little lines. It hit me like a physical blow. 5. Not as in the points of a star. 5 as in 5 o'clock. At dawn. She was telling me the time. She was telling me when. She knew I would come for her. She knew I would understand. Their plan hadn't changed. The attack was still on. But now it wasn't an infiltration. It was a rescue mission. And I was going in alone. But as I stood there, a wounded man with a hopeless plan, my eyes fell upon the gun cabinet. I had checked my weapons before I left. My Winchester, my Colt, my spare revolver. But now, there was something new. Leaning in the back corner was a rifle I had never seen before. It was a Sharps 50-90, a big game rifle, a cannon that could punch a hole through a brick wall from half a mile away. Tucked into the stock was a note. My blood ran cold when I saw the handwriting. It was the same sharp, precise script as the note that had come with Maggie. The note said, "He took your queen, but a king is nothing without his castle. Use the high ground." Who was this person? This ghost who was pulling the strings? They had delivered Maggie to me. They knew about my connection to Colonel Reed. They knew Crawford's every move. And now they had delivered me the perfect weapon for a siege. It didn't make sense. It was like I was a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was playing. But I didn't have time to question it. The clock was ticking. Dawn was just hours away. I grabbed the Sharps, a box of its heavy brass cartridges, and stepped out into the night. I had a promise to keep. The desert held its breath, waiting. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope, as terrible and dangerous as it was. The ride to Black Creek Ranch was a journey into the heart of darkness. The moon was a sliver of bone in a black velvet sky, offering just enough light to see the trail. My wounded arm throbbed with every beat of my heart, a painful metronome counting down to a dawn that might be my last. The Sharps rifle was heavy across my back, its weight both a burden and a comfort. Who was my unseen benefactor? The question gnawed at me. It had to be someone close to Crawford, someone with intimate knowledge of his operations and my past, someone who wanted him gone, but needed a blunt instrument to do the job. And I was that instrument. Maggie was the bait, and I was the hammer. I reached the ridge overlooking the compound an hour before sunrise. I tethered my horse in a small ravine and crawled the last 100 yards on my belly. The big rifle pushed ahead of me. I found a perfect spot, a nest of rocks that gave me a clear view of the entire ranch, well out of range of any rifle they might have. The compound was a hornet's nest. Torches burned everywhere. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their rifles held at the ready. Crawford knew I was coming. He was expecting a frontal assault, a fool's errand. He wasn't expecting a ghost on a hill with a cannon. My mysterious friend was right. A king is nothing without his castle, and I was about to start knocking down the walls. As the first hint of gray lightened the eastern sky, I settled in, resting the long barrel of the sharps on a flat rock. I peered through the scope. I could see everything. The main house, the bunkhouse, the watchtower at the main gate, and then I saw her. They dragged her out of the main house and tied her to a post in the center of the yard. A whipping post. Maggie. Her head was bowed, but she wasn't beaten. Even from this distance, I could feel the defiance radiating from her. She was a queen, even in chains. Crawford himself stepped out onto the porch. He held a bullwhip in his hand. He was going to make a show of it. He was going to break her in front of his men, and in front of me, when I inevitably charged in. He raised the whip. The entire compound went silent. That's when I took my first shot. The Sharp's rifle kicked like a mule, the boom echoing across the valley like a clap of thunder. It wasn't a warning shot. Through the scope, I saw the watchtower at the gate explode in a shower of splintered wood as the massive, dirty, 50 caliber slug tore through it. The guard inside simply vanished. Chaos erupted. Men scrambled for cover, shouting, confused. They were looking for an attacker in the shadows, not on a ridge half a mile away. Crawford stood frozen on the porch, the whip still raised, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. He knew. He knew it was me. I reloaded, the heavy cartridge sliding into the breech with a satisfying click. My second shot took out the torch next to the bunkhouse door, plunging that side of the yard into darkness. My third shattered the axle of a supply wagon they were using for cover. I wasn't aiming for men, not yet. I was aiming for his fortress. I was taking it apart, piece by piece. And then, in the midst of the chaos, I saw him. Marcus Webb. He ran toward Maggie, a knife in his hand. For a terrible second, I thought he was going to kill her. My finger tightened on the trigger, my sights finding the center of his back. But he didn't hurt her. He cut the ropes that bound her. He freed her. Maggie stumbled for a moment, then sprinted for the cover of the main house. Webb turned, his pistol in his hand, and fired at two of Crawford's own men who were trying to run her down. His betrayal was now out in the open. He had chosen his side. The firefight became a whirlwind of smoke and confusion. It was Webb and a handful of loyal deputies against the rest of Crawford's private army. I kept firing the sharps, providing cover, taking out strategic targets, a window here, a doorway there, sowing panic and pinning them down. And then I saw Maggie again. She appeared in a second-story window of the main house, but she wasn't empty-handed. She held a rifle. She had armed herself. She began firing down into the yard, her shots methodical, controlled. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a soldier. Together, the three of us, the ghost on the ridge, the brother on the ground, and the queen in the castle, had turned Crawford's fortress into a slaughterhouse. The tide of the battle was turning. Crawford's men were disorganized, terrified, caught in a three-way crossfire. Crawford himself, seeing his empire crumbling around him, let out a roar of pure animalistic fury. He fired his revolver wildly at the house, then turned and ran. Not toward the fight, but toward the stables at the back of the compound. He was running. The coward was trying to escape. I lined up the shot. He was a moving target 100 yards away. But the sharps was a precise instrument. I breathed out, my finger tightening on the trigger. And then the world exploded. A searing pain shot through my side and I was thrown from my position. One of Crawford's men had circled around, creeping up the ridge behind me. His shot had caught me completely by surprise. I rolled, my Colt already in my hand, and fired twice. The man grunted and fell, but the damage was done. Blood was pouring from a wound in my side. I was exposed, and down in the yard, Crawford had reached the stables. He was getting away. All of it, the fight, the sacrifice, would be for nothing if he escaped. I tried to get up, but my legs wouldn't hold me. The world was starting to go gray at the edges. I was losing too much blood. Through the scope of the fallen sharps, I watched as Crawford threw a saddle on a horse. I was too far away, too weak to make the shot. I had failed. But then a figure emerged from the shadows of the stable. It was Maggie. She held her rifle like a veteran, her face set, her eyes burning with a cold, righteous fire. Crawford saw her. He laughed, a ragged, ugly sound. You think you can stop me? I made you. I own you. Not anymore. Maggie's voice rang out, clear and strong, carrying all the way up to my perch on the ridge. Crawford raised his pistol, but Maggie was faster. Her rifle cracked once. Crawford staggered back, a red stain blossoming on his chest. He looked down at it, confused, as if he couldn't believe his own creation had turned on him. He looked back up at her, a snarl on his face. You think this is over? He spat, blood bubbling from his lips. You don't even know who you were fighting for. Ask Hayes. Ask him about his father. Ask him who started all this. And then he collapsed into the dust still, dead. His final words echoed in the sudden silence. Ask him about his father. What did he mean? My father was a rancher, a hard man, but an honest one. He died of a fever 20 years ago. Down in the yard, Maggie stood over Crawford's body, the smoking rifle in her hand. Her brother, Marcus, ran to her side. The remaining few of Crawford's men were surrendering. It was over. We had won. But as the darkness closed in around me, as I lay bleeding out on a lonely ridge, Crawford's last, poisoned words haunted me. It felt like the final piece of a puzzle I didn't know I was solving. A final twist of the knife. I had come here to save a girl and destroy a monster. But what if the monster was closer than I ever knew? What if the ghost I'd been running from my whole life wasn't from the war at all, but was waiting for me right back at home? The darkness took me, and I knew no more. I woke up to the smell of antiseptic and clean sheets. For a moment, I thought I was dead, but death doesn't hurt this much. My side was a universe of fire. I opened my eyes. I wasn't on the ridge. I was in a clean white room, a military field hospital. A figure was sitting in a chair by my bed. It was Colonel Marcus Reed, my old CO. His face was grimmer, more lined than I remembered, but his eyes were the same, sharp, intelligent, and carrying the weight of command. Welcome back to the land of the living, Samuel, he said, his voice a low rumble. You gave us quite a scare. The wire, I croaked, my throat dry. You got the wire. The old man in Redemption was one of Crawford's, Reed confirmed, but the lines are federal property. We monitor all traffic. Your coded message raised a flag. By the time we figured out what it meant and where you were, the party was already over. We just helped clean up the mess. He paused, his gaze heavy. You took down the entire network, Sam. The ledger Miss Cole memorized. It goes all the way to the top. Senators, judges, men I've been hunting for years. You finished it. It was over. We'd won. But Crawford's last words still echoed in my mind. Reed, I said, struggling to sit up. Crawford said something about my father. The colonel's face went hard. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. Some things are better left buried, Sam. Tell me, I demanded. He was silent for a long time, watching the soldiers drill on the parade ground below. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with a story he never wanted to tell. Your father wasn't just a rancher, Sam. Before the war, he was a different kind of man, a powerful man with powerful, unsavory friends. He started the operation, this trafficking of girls. It was his. He built the entire network. Crawford was just his protege, the ambitious lieutenant who took over when your father decided to retire. The words hit me harder than the bullet had. My entire life, my entire identity was built in a lie. My father, the man I revered, the man whose memory I tried to live up to, was the original monster, the source of the rot. Why did he stop? I whispered. Because of you, Reed said, turning back to face me. You were born. He saw you, his son, and he saw the abyss he was living in. He wanted something better for you, so he faked his own death, moved you to the middle of nowhere, and became a simple rancher. He spent the rest of his life trying to outrun his past, trying to make sure his sin never touched you. My whole life was a penance, a lie designed to protect me. The note, your turn has come. It wasn't a threat. It was a legacy, a dark inheritance. My father's sin had finally found me. Who sent Maggie to me? I asked, the final piece clicking into place. Who sent the rifle? I did, Reed said quietly. After your father died, he left me a letter, to be opened only if the network he created ever resurfaced and threatened to go public. It contained everything, the names, the locations, and instructions. He knew Crawford was unstable. He knew that one day the whole thing would implode. And he knew that the only man with the skills and the motivation to burn it all down was his own son. My father hadn't just run from his past. He had built a weapon to destroy it, and that weapon was me. Maggie, Miss Cole, she was our inside source for months, Reed continued. Her brother was feeding us information. When Crawford finally broke her, we knew it was time. We had to get her out. And we needed to put the final piece on the board. You. It was your father's last wish, Sam. His final act of redemption. To use the son he raised to be a good man to destroy the evil empire he had built. I lay back against the pillows, the truth a weight heavier than any stone. I was the son of a monster, raised to be a saint, and used as a weapon of vengeance. A week later, I was able to walk. Maggie was there. She had been there the whole time, waiting. The bruises on her face had faded, but the scars in her eyes remained. We stood on the porch of the hospital, looking out at the distant mountains. My brother is a free man, she said. He testified against everyone. They're calling him a hero. He is, I said. We were quiet for a long time. Two broken people, pieced back together with scars and secrets. What Crawford said, she began, her voice hesitant, about your father. Is it true? Yes, I said. It's all true. She reached out and took my hand. Her touch was warm, steady. Your father's sins are not your own, Samuel. You are the man who rode into hell for a stranger. You are the man who saved me, who saved us all. That is who you are. I looked down at our joined hands. Her past was carved on her back. My past was in my blood. But here, together, maybe we could be something new, something whole. The federal government cleaned up the territory. The powerful men fell. The network was shattered. But Maggie and I knew that the evil wasn't gone. It was just scattered, hiding, waiting. We never went back to my ranch. It was a part of a life that no longer existed. We took the money the government offered as a reward and we bought a new place, high in the mountains. A place of healing. And soon they started to arrive. The other girls. The ones who had been found. The ones who escaped. They came to us looking for a safe harbor, and we gave it to them. We taught them to ride, to shoot, to be strong. We taught them that they were not defined by the brands on their skin, but by the fire in their souls. We didn't just create a sanctuary, we created an army of survivors led by a woman with a past and a man who had accepted his legacy and decided to write a new ending. My name is Samuel Hayes. I am the son of a monster, but my story is not his. My story is one of redemption, written in gunpowder and hope, and it's a story that is far from over. The desert doesn't wash you clean, but if you're lucky, you find someone willing to walk through the dust with you, and together you can learn to make it rain. If you made it this far, you're a true survivor, just like Maggie and Samuel. This story is a reminder that our past don't have to define our future, and that even in the darkest of places, the smallest light can start a fire. What did you think of Crawford's final reveal? Did you see it coming? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories about the darkness that lurks just beneath the surface and the everyday heroes who fight back, then do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Every click helps these stories reach someone who might need to hear them. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.